Thank you for showing up. I know it's difficult with this weather. If it were up to me, I'd be outside, honestly. So I'll be showing you a bit about the connector kit, how you can create connectors, how you can use them, and why we created the connector kit. I'm certain you all saw some of the connectors already. Earlier I displayed how you can use them with Amazon to create smart applications and our integrations with Amazon. For this session, I will show you how to build them for the people who are not familiar with Java actions and what we've extended there. I'll also show you some more examples of connectors that we have. But especially I want to start out with why do we do this? We already have web services, REST services, and we have Java. So why are we creating a connector kit? I thought this app was smart, but not so much. Yeah, manual works. No, it's this one, I think. Okay, turning it on and off always works. So this is a slide we've seen before. How do you create apps and integration and being able to connect to services and other systems is really important. It's getting more and more important every day. And we get a lot of questions about that. Oh, I have a database. Can you please enable me to get data out of this database? Or I want to use this service or a messaging queue or something like that. So we see the need for integration, and it's getting more and more important. And we also see that the landscape that we need to integrate with is getting more and more complex. Lots of services. I have some examples here. If you go to Amazon and you look at what they have in their catalog of services, it's huge. Not everything is relevant. There's some gaming services even in here. But there's a lot of interesting things that you can use in combination with Mendix apps. This is a screenshot, not a great one, but it shows you some of the services in Azure. Another one about Pivotal. Also a lot of services that are enabled in the Cloud Foundry platform of Pivotal. And IBM is also using Cloud Foundry and has its own set of services that they enable you to use. So these are lots of Watson services. So integration is crucial for most applications. And it's essential for you, for us, that we can do this easily. So the first step that we took, and I think it's a really important step, and it doesn't get enough attention here, in my opinion, is that we've enabled a native REST in the modeler. We've always had the REST module. Technically, it was working, but it could be easier and a bit more robust. So that's what we've done in Mendix 6.6, so it will be out at the end of this month. For you who haven't seen this yet, I know that some people have talked about it. Peter has shown something about it last hour. I'll give you a quick run-through. So you can now just say, I want to call a REST service, define if it's a GET, POST, or PUT, or patch even. You can use XML, JSON, including mapping onto your domain model, and the result can also be easily used in your Mendix application. So this is what it looks like. There's an easy way to provide the URL for the service, parameterized, so you can put attributes from your entities in there, like API keys or queries or what you have. In this case, it's an API from Wunderground, Weather Underground, so you can get the forecast for a city anywhere in the world. It doesn't get, if you need, you can specify headers or username authentication. You can provide a request body, so the payload that you need to send to the service. And there's different ways of handling the outcome after calling the service. So you can just take it as a string and do whatever you like with it, or you can run it through the import mapper and translate the data that you received to the domain model in Mendix. So this is an example of the mapper, where you can just take any piece of JSON, will recognize the structure, show you the structure, and you can use that structure to map the structure onto the domain model structure. So fairly easy. And as you can see, some of these structures can get quite complex. Now it's one big list. This one is fairly, has some levels of nesting in there, which is supported by the mapper. So this is great, and it really helps when you're using a lot of the SDKs or a lot of the services out there these days that are using REST. But when you start using REST, your first idea is often that it's easy, but then you start using it and it gets quite complex quite fast. So for example, if you go to Amazon, they have a fairly difficult way of handling authentication. It's, I think, 4 or 6-step process where you have to take the payload and your URL and canalize it and do some things with it, add the timestamp. So before you can actually call the REST service, you have to do quite a bit of work. So what they do is they provide an SDK. There's different ones. This one is in Java. There's ones in Python or Ruby and other languages that you have, C# probably. Because in the end, just using the REST service is too complex for most people. If you go to Twilio or other service that has a REST endpoint, most of them provide an SDK, just to make it easier for you to use it in your programming environment. And of course, not everything is REST. We've seen examples this morning of Mqtt, a message queuing protocol especially targeted at small devices, IoT devices. And there's a lot of databases out there that you can reach through JDBC, for example. So what we see is there's really a need to have client SDKs, like the ones that Amazon provides, also for a platform like Mendix, that you can just easily have packaged actions that you can call external services. So that is where the Mendix connectors come in. We provide you with a kind of a SDK or a client library for certain services. They're all available in the App Store. We have provided a number of them already, but everybody is free to create connectors. I will show you later how you can do it, and upload them into the App Store so that other people can also benefit from them. Especially if you provide a service yourself and you want people to be easily be able to use them in their Mendix applications, it could be very useful to have your connector in the App Store, and anybody can use it. Okay, so I showed you machine learning this morning, in case you were here. Push notifications was used during the keynote, where the temperature was read of a device. And Nick got a push notification on his mobile phone just by using this connector. It's one action that you add to your microflow. The database connector I will show a bit later. Watson services. Erno is having a session on that, also later today. He's showing integration with Watson and also integration with SAS, for example. So what is it? What is the connector kit? Well, it's on 2 levels. We have to look at it. There's the Mendix platform, where we enable you to create connectors. And actually, it's just Java Actions 2.0. Who here is familiar with Java Actions? Who has created Java Actions? Okay, so fair amount. It's basically, it's an improved version of Java Actions. And in the App Store, we have all sorts of connectors already available for you to use. And the first version of Java Actions, it was powerful. You could do anything in Java, but it was not always as easy to use. It was sometimes brittle. If you refer to a microflow name, for example, and you change the name of the microflow, it wouldn't get detected. So these are the things that we are focusing for this version of Java Actions. For the connector kit, it should be really easy to use if you're using the connector. It should be robust. You can change and refactor your model, and it will still work, or it will inform you that things need to be changed. And it needs to be really productive. So the focus is really on the users of the connectors. For the people who are building the connectors, we still require you to have knowledge of Java, be familiar with how to create a package and upload it to the App Store. And I'll show you in a bit how that works. But we want Java developers to create connectors, that in the end are as easy to use as any other functionality in the Mendix platform by the users of the connectors. So here you have an example, a project with a number of connectors already in there. There's KPN LoRa, which is already provided by a partner of Mendix, First Consulting. There's push notifications, the Watson, the database integrator, and IoT. And this example shows you, okay, the application is starting, so this is an on-app startup microflow, which is called when your application is started. And you see some familiar things in here if you ever work with Mendix, like Start App Cloud Services for authentication. And here we make a connection with KPN LoRa. We set up an endpoint, so whenever a message arrives at KPN from an IoT device, it will get delivered to your Mendix application at this endpoint that you can configure here. And you can specify a microflow, and that will be triggered, and you can handle the payload that's received from the device. So that's really nice. So the aim, the focus of the connector kit, as I said, was on ease of use, robustness, and productivity. So I'll show you a couple of things that what it looks like now in the modeler when you use a connector. So you have them all available in your toolbox. It will be a lot easier to read your microflows now because you really see what they're doing instead of Java action call or something. You can see that this one is executing a JSON query. There's no, for Mendix modelers, the word Java can be a bit hard to understand, that they think it's hard. So this is a lot easier for them, and they can easily use it and they know what they're doing. And also the way that you parameterize the actions and you provide it with your values will look a lot more native. So it's not one table with key value. Instead, it's a bit more user-friendly form. And we'll make some more improvements here along the way. Another big thing that we are improving is the fact that you can now also have parameters that refer to documents in your model. Like a document could be a page, or it could be a microflow. So that's like the specification of what the microflow should do. So if you want your action to trigger that microflow, you can now directly point to the microflow, provide that as a parameter, and the action can use it. And the first big improvement that you can see here already is generics. Basically, you can build Java actions that get some input, any type. You don't have to know when you're building the connector what kind of entity it will get provided. But the user can, at use time, provide an entity, and also the result of the action can return that exact entity. That was not possible before. So you had to either subclass from an any type, but then you got an any type back, and it was hard to use. So now you say, okay, this action is going to return a person. You will actually get a person back, and it will be really easy to use. So again, ease of use. So entities is one thing that you can specify as a parameter. Microflows, mappings, really important. I'll show you some examples also with the database connector, for example. It returns a JSON, and if you have a mapping, it's really easy to map it onto a domain model in your Mendix application. Templated strings. So you can have like one string where you say, okay, in this place, you need to replace it with an attribute value or something like that. So it's already in there for log statements, but will be available for all actions. And also you can refer to pages, like the example I mentioned this morning, push notifications. If you receive a push notification on your mobile device, what page should be displayed? So that should be a parameter of the action to send a push notification. So that's Java Actions 2.0, easy to use, robust and productive, really aimed at improving the life of the user of your connectors and your Java actions. And again, we have a number of connectors already available in the App Store. For SQL databases, IoT, machine learning, Watson, notifications, and KPN LoRa, which was provided by First Consulting. Okay. another summary. Let's skip that. Okay. So how do you use them? Well, we've seen a couple of things already. I will show a bit more examples. So the SQL database. And this is really actually a really nice place where you can use JSON, as I mentioned before. You just do a query on a database. Most databases have support for SQL. You can connect through JDBC, execute a SQL statement, and the result will be returned in SQL. So here you see the SQL statement, how you specify it, what is returned, so you get different records. And this can be, this example, or this result of the action, you can paste into a mapping or a JSON structure document. We will show you the structure, what fields are there, what is returned by the SQL statement when you execute it on the database. And then you can use a mapping to import it into your domain model. Push notifications, again, it's just two actions that you can input in your microflow. You have to configure a user and his devices. And then you can say, okay, for the current user, I've received something and I want to send him a push notification, and it will be delivered to his mobile device. And the IoT, just a quick, I did this earlier today, but there's a number of actions. The things actions allow you to query what is available on Amazon, what kind of devices are registered there, and what do you know about them, attributes, what is its location, for example. And then you can ask things like, what is the status of this IoT device? What's the temperature or the humidity? Quite hot. And you can receive messages from AWS, or if there's something that you need to know about, temperatures too high, over 30 degrees, you want to receive a message. Those kind of things that you can do with the IoT connector. So you have something, an action, get list, you provide your credentials for Amazon, you can provide some attribute that you will filter on, only give me the plain parts, or only give me the other parts, maintenance cards, for example. And again, the result is returned in a JSON structure. We can parse that for you, and you can map it to your domain model and use the data from Amazon. And the last example is, I think, subscribing to an MQTT topic. So that's quite similar to what the LoRa connector is doing. You need an endpoint, or you need a place where you want to receive messages. In this case, we connect to Mqtt. It's a specific protocol for IoT messages that is used by Amazon. Whenever a message is posted on a topic, you can receive it in your Mendix application. So you can immediately take steps when you receive it. It needs some input authentication for Amazon certificates. And you need to tell it the topic name. So you have different topics. You can have multiple topics. Every device has a number of topics. There's a separate topic, for example, for a request of a change of the IoT device. And there's also a different topic for this device reported this status. And you can create new topics that you say, okay, all alerts need to go into this topic. And if you just subscribe yourself to that topic, then you only get the events that you need to know. This example, what it does, it receives the payload, the MQTT payload, so the message from the device through Amazon, and then it creates a Google message. So it creates a push message to the device of the user. So you get the message from the device straight onto your mobile phone within seconds. So that's for the part for using the connectors. As I said, there will be more and more that we're working on together with partners to enable you to connect all sorts of things. And as I say, together with partners can create these connectors, customers, anybody can create these connectors. So let's talk about how you can create these. So a number of you have already created Java actions. In essence, it's basically the same, with us focusing on how to make it as easy as possible to consume. So you have a module in you have two different projects. So one project will be for the person who creates the connector, and from there you will export a package that you can upload to the App Store, and other people can use it in their projects. So this is the source project. In here, you can add a Java action, and this is a bit changed compared to what it was before the Java actions. So we have a few tabs here. General, where you provide the parameters. There's something called type parameters, so the generics. I will go into depth a bit more later. Then the really interesting part here is expose as microflow action, which means that this particular action, will show up in your toolbox and can just be dragged and dropped onto microflows. And you can provide documentation. Okay, so going back to that microflow action tab, this basically means that this will be shown for every Java action you have in any project when you open it with this version of Mendix. So you can easily add any action that you already have into the toolbox. And the only thing that you have to do is that you have to type in a caption. What is it called when you drag it onto your microflow, and what name is used in the toolbox. You want to categorize it, for example, AWS IoT or Watson. So you give it a category name, and you provide it with an icon. And then you have it in the toolbox, like this. So this one, again, uses a weather underground, get current weather, get weather forecast, and you drag it on, and the icon is used in both places, and you see a good readable name, so easily understandable for everyone looking at the microflow. Okay, so to the topic of generics. Who is familiar with generics in Java? Few hands, a bit more than 10. Okay, so basically it enables you to write some code that doesn't know at the time that you write it what objects it's going to use. Is it going to use persons, or is it going to use a car, for example? But you want to say, okay, whenever I provide a car here, then the result should also return a car. And that's what we've enabled. So you have type parameters. You can say the user can provide a weather result entity. And I don't know yet what entity that is, because it's in the project that is going to use the connector, and I have no clue of what project it's going to be used in. But the user is going to provide that when he uses it. And then you can create parameters, and you can say this parameter of the action actually refers to that type parameter, and then you can also use it in the result of your action. So the result type I have here basically says that it should return the type parameter that was provided by the user. In the Java code, it looks like this. So this basically is the object type that the user provides. He says, I'm going to input a car, and my result should also be a car. So I'm Mendix object here. This doesn't state what kind of entity we're talking about. This doesn't say if it's a person or a car. So if you do this so far in Mendix 6 or Mendix 5, we would return a generic object. And in the microflow that receives the result, you don't know how to handle it, because you don't know if it's a car or a person. From 6.6 on, we will actually return what you provided as the input parameter. So it will be a car or an entity, and then you can just access its attribute as before, as you would expect. So then you have a Java action. You need to provide, as a connector, a builder, you need to provide the actual Java implementation. Lots of it can be done with the Java API that we have. You can find the documentation on the website. Create objects, maybe connect to a database, connect to a service. The connectors that we've provided for AWS use the AWS Java SDK under the hood. So you can use the SDKs maybe from Twilio or from Twitter, and use that in your Java code, and then provide that as a Mendix connector. So what you do is, when you're finished implementing it, you export it as a module package, and then you have an MPK, and that is something that you can upload in the App Store, provide some information, maybe the location of the source code on GitHub, like we do with our connectors, Who built it, what kind of licensing you provide for the source code, and then anybody can download it from the App Store and use it. So to reiterate, the steps here are you create a model, a module. You define the actions that you need. You define how you want them exposed in the toolbox. You implement the required Java code. You export it as a module connector and you upload it to the App Store. Our intent is that we hide all these complex modules. Right now, if you download something from the App Store, you will see it in your project structure. But they're generic connectors, so they don't really have anything to do with your business problem that you're solving. So our intent is also to hide them there, so that your project structure only shows you what is relevant to your business problem and to your business project. That means that to use that connector, people need to be able to use it from the toolbox. So the actions that you have should be all that your users should care about. You drag it on your microflow, you provide it some parameters, and then under the hood, all the Java takes care of what needs to happen. So to wrap up, just to highlight what we have right now in the App Store. This is a slide I stole from Johan. So we have SQL databases. This is really a feature request that we got a lot. So I hope you find it useful, and let me know what you need to have it improved and if it suits your use case. AWS IoT, machine learning, Watson notifications, push notifications, and LoRa. Some brochure sites, basically. This is the database connector. It's not just for queries. It's really interesting that you can do execute statements. That basically means that you can insert data, you can update data, you can delete data, but more importantly, you can execute stored procedures or user-defined functions in Postgres. And there's a lot of legacy databases that wrap their database tables inside stored procedures or packages. In Oracle, for example, that's used quite a lot. So by using these execute statement actions, you can get access to that functionality in those databases. Postgres also has, and also Redshift, they have some user-defined functions that are really useful for analytics. So if you want to do a bit more analytics on your data, that's not supported by SQL. It might be supported using the execute statement. So the Watson connector, go to Erno if you want to know more about this. Machine learning. So you can execute your machine learning model, your statistical classification on the data you have, real time. So you receive some data, maybe from an IoT device, and you want to forecast, make some prediction. Is this going to break or not? You can use Amazon Machine Learning. The IoT connector, as I explained, and provided by First Consulting and LoRa connector to connect with the KPN LoRa network. And push notifications. Okay, so when this is available, we have 6.6 coming out at the end of the month. In 6.6, you'll be able to change your Java actions into actions, microflow actions in the toolbox, provide with captions, icons, and then you can export already the module that you have as a connector and upload it to the App Store. So that is already something that you can do with 6.6. We're working on more parameters after 6.6. Whatever we find useful or get feedback from you, what is needed, will be after 6.6. And that includes the string template, the microflow parameters, the mappings,